Hello, I am Commissioner Emma I. Darnell, Fulton County Commissioner, District 6. Welcome to Mighty Six Conversations. As you know, Mighty Six Conversations is really an information program which is really focusing on the whole purpose of this government, and that is a sustainable community. Economically strong, environmentally safe, with liberty, justice, and dignity for all. The subject for today will be the Adamsville Regional Health Center Health Disparities Study of 2009, an update. And we'll be back in a moment to find out what's going on. I'm very pleased to have joining me in the conversation today Jeff Cheek, who is director of the Ryan White program. Jeff also has been one of the major professional investigators for the public health program with respect to this particular issue. In fact, Jeff, I believe you were the major person who led in that 2009 study.
Yes,
Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you give us just a little background on
Sure.
that, and then we're going to talk about the findings, and you recently updated that data.
Yes.
And so we're just so pleased to have you here today because, as I said earlier before we got started, people have heard enough from politicians at this time. They do want facts and information. So we are so glad to have you. Give us a little background. That Adamsville Regional Health Center has received a lot of publicity because of its design.
Right.
We see all kind of awards, but this is about a little bit more than the building, isn't it?
Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for letting me join you.
Thank you, Chair.
This all sort of started in 2009 in response to a concern that you expressed to the Board of Commissioners. And that was that the state had done a disparity report and looked at the health outcomes of the citizens of Fulton County and saw that we were doing very poorly. And so what we wanted to do was look at the different important sections of Fulton County and see what the health disparities were, to see what we could do to begin to address those. And so we started looking at the Adamsville area because we were looking at perhaps expanding to the new Adamsville Regional Health Center. And so we wanted to see who were the people we would be serving, but also what were some of the biggest health issues that were facing those communities.
Yes.
And so we did our original study. We looked at, for example, major cardiovascular disease, looking at all those issues around the heart, to see how that was impacting the community.
So you were looking at the health status of
Yes,
the
ma'am.
people.
Yes, ma'am.
I know you looked at some demographics too.
Right.
But you looked at health status in certain health conditions.
Correct.
Right.
Right. And so we wanted to sort of see what the impact was within the different communities. And in Adamsville, for example, when we looked at major cardiovascular disease, we noticed that the rates in the Adamsville area were greater than for Fulton County as a whole.
The rate of deaths?
The rate of deaths
Is that
due
what
to
you measured?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I think it's important for us to remember that when we're talking about the rate of deaths, we're talking about people. We're talking about statistics today, and I'm going to do my numbers.
That's an important point, yeah.
But
Yes,
also
yes.
wanted to remember that behind every one of these numbers is a person. So when recently I was asked by Commissioner Darnell to sort of look to see how we were doing now. So I sort of started looking at 2016 numbers and comparing them to where we were in 2013 to see what was happening in the community. And even though when you look at the map, you see that the rate of major cardiovascular disease in Adamsville is higher than Fulton County as a whole, and that raises some concerns that the population of Adamsville is about 10% of Fulton County, but we were looking at almost 20% of the major cardiovascular disease cases being in Adamsville. But the good news is that even though things are increasing, we're doing better than we were.
Better than 2013.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
That even
Still the highest, but
still
down
the highest
from
right.
2013.
And the cases were still going up, but the cases in Adamsville went up 5%, but in Fulton County as a whole went up 11%. So even though we were still moving up, we were doing better than the county as a
Is
whole.
that why you should call it a disparity?
Yes, ma'am. And I think it's a disparity because there are certain communities or certain populations or certain ethnicities or age groups that are overburdened by disease. And by overburdened, it means,
We might as well get into that right now.
sure,
Because that is what people are thinking. What are some of the factors that
Right.
public health officials have
Right.
identified as perhaps, and you're about to name some of those now.
I think there are certain health related conditions. You know, things
Behavioral.
that we can do differently. We could
Yes.
exercise more. We can
Stop smoking.
not smoke. We could reduce the fats in our foods, eat more vegetables.
Yes.
And those are important things that we as individuals could do. But I think there's also, we need to look at what can we as Fulton County do, and what can you as the policy setters do to sort of guide us in
There
how
are
we go
some
about.
public policy issues, aren't there?
Right. I don't know that we can expect you to have to eat better foods if you have no grocery stores near you.
If you don't have any fresh food
Right.
in a place in your community to buy fresh food.
That we shouldn't be
so that
surprised.
food desert business is relevant then,
Yes, ma'am.
isn't it?
And we can't expect you to exercise if there's no parks or if there's no sidewalks. We can't expect our seniors to stay active or to have a healthy meal unless we have the senior centers where we can keep them involved.
And
active.
transportation to get to the center.
Right. Having the center only helps if people can get there. Those are some of the things that I think can help improve the health. And I think some of the things that we've been seeing in Fulton County that are making our numbers look better.
Well, now, is this what the public health folks refer to when they talk about the social determinants of health?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. That there are certain things.
Social and economic,
Right.
I guess.
That there are things in the community that sort of guide our health. You know, the stress of poverty, living in an area with a large number of pollutants.
And you pointed that out in your update. There are certain census tracts that are, in comparison with 2013, they are really still very bad.
Right.
But it's a difference in some of these social determinants.
Right. And I think it sort of mirrors the conversation at large, that there are some people that are benefiting, but not at a rate that everyone else is. That the health benefits are not equal, and the improvements
That's
have
an
not been
important
equal.
point.
And so,
Even though you might live in the area, the health benefits are not the same
correct,
from census tract to census tract.
correct, correct.
Is that the point?
Yeah.
Because I know you all have cautioned us against making too many conclusions
Right.
just based on the percentage of deaths.
Right.
Because actually, I believe that the epidemiologists and people in public health, they go a little deeper than this, don't they?
Absolutely, absolutely.
We might as well let
And they're
folks
the
know that.
experts.
They go a little deeper.
Right, right.
Yes.
And
I know you work with them
Yes,
in
ma'am.
developing this.
And I think, you know, because I'm not an epidemiologist, what I look at is, you know, what are the areas that are impacted? But we've got to be careful in not trying to figure out just based on these numbers why it is. You know, I think there's
We
better
don't
studies
have
that say
a
the why.
definitive answer as to
Correct.
why.
Right. And
But public health people have told us,
Yes,
though,
yes.
that there are certain social and economic factors that
Exactly.
impact health status.
Exactly. So
And
we
I-
would assume that they come into play in this.
Pardon
Absolutely.
me?
That you know, we can, because of those studies and because of what we know, we can believe that that's what's happening.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
just based on what we know.
Yes.
So we looked at cardiovascular disease,
Mm-hmm.
and we found out that in comparison with 2013,
Mm-hmm.
it was a little better in some places in the area.
Yes, ma'am.
Jeff, we probably need to define the area, what we mean by Adamsville, because most people would probably think we're talking about the community,
Right.
Adamsville community. But for public health folks,
Mm-hmm.
the Adamsville area goes as far as Campbellton and Camp Creek. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
right?
Yes, ma'am.
And far north as the Chattahoochee River,
And
You
then
know,
up to Bolton.
Bolton,
Railroad.
Peyton over in
Yes, ma'am.
there. And did I see that it even goes down Hollowell Parkway as far as Mildred Place and
Yes.
Westlake?
Yes.
That's way down the road
Right.
there.
And the way we came up with that
Yes,
is
how did they do that?
we looked at our
5 miles.
Yes, ma'am. We looked at the health centers and we said, 95% of the people that are served there are within a 5-mile area.
I see.
So we said, well, let's take where it's going to be, and let's look 5 miles around there. And so it goes beyond what we would call Adamsville or what people who live in Adamsville would call Adamsville.
They're part of it, but
Yes.
actually it goes 5 miles north and south. The significance of Chattahoochee is, of course, that's where we,
Right.
we get our drinking water, and
Right.
that is where citizens have been organized for some time to be sensitive to these health
Yes.
status issues.
Yes.
We're going to come back and talk about some of the other health conditions and some of your findings, Jeff, with respect to those. But I think that the what you're adding here in terms of cautioning us about understanding the data is extremely important.
Thank you.
We'll be back in a moment. Stay with us. Well, Jeff, I know in the original health status study you looked at 6 or 7 health conditions, but we want to focus on 3 or 4 of them.
Right.
In addition to cardiovascular disease, when you did your update this year, you looked at 4 other health conditions.
Yes.
Yes.
And one of the things that stood out the most was high blood pressure. You know,
Yep.
it's something that we all know something about, and we know what the issue is, but I don't know that we really understand the importance of it and how it's impacting our
I don't
communities.
think we do.
When we looked at the Adamsville area, comparing the 2 years, we
That
saw
big area.
Right.
Within 5 miles.
Yes.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
we saw was the rate was 2.5 times greater in the Adamsville area than for the county as a whole.
2.5.
2.5 times.
That was higher than cardiovascular
Yes.
disease, wasn't it?
And what we also saw was, even though cases dropped for the Fulton County as a whole by 1%,
Yes.
they went up by 4 in Adamsville. So
High blood pressure.
high blood pressure is taking a bigger piece of the pie and in looking at deaths in the Adamsville area.
How did it compare in terms of 2013 to 2016? Was kind of stable, or had it increased?
It increased substantially. Well, no, not substantially. It increased in the Adamsville area by about 4%.
About 4.
While it went down.
Yes,
for
that's pretty
the county as a whole.
significant.
Right.
I think that was an increase probably higher than any of the conditions that you looked at, right? Maybe except maybe stroke.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So high blood pressure, Central and South Fulton
Yes. The highest impact.
had the highest percentage, and we're using deaths. We're talking
Yes.
about deaths.
Yes.
And as you pointed out, Jeff, we're not talking about numbers on a
Right.
page.
Right.
We're talking about people's mothers and fathers.
Right.
You know,
Right.
we're talking about people,
Right.
and we're talking about the health authority of the nation's counties.
Right.
And we have to deal with these numbers
Right.
because it is part, as you indicated, of our public policy responsibility.
Right.
You know, we're not doing this as a hobby. We're doing this because taxpayers have paid their dollars to ask us to provide some assistance. People want to live longer, don't they?
Exactly.
Yes. All right. So in addition to that high blood pressure figure, though, I think we still need to do a lot of education and
Right.
prevention on that.
Right.
You pointed
If
out
we wanna make a
earlier, though,
difference.
Jeff, that there are obvious some behavioral things that
Right.
we can do.
Right.
But at the same time, you said that when it comes to public policy as well,
Right.
you know, what are some of the, have the public health people identified any of the mental health factors that might be related to? I noticed that when they put the program together
Right.
for that Adamsville Regional Health Center,
Right.
one of the first things they did was to bring in behavioral health
Right.
specialists.
Right. Well,
So-
what we've learned with a lot of our diseases is you can't just look at the body without looking at the head.
They go together,
Yes.
don't they?
And that until someone is mentally able or ready to start addressing their health issues, we could say whatever we want. We can talk about whatever we want, but it's not going to make a difference. And so we need to make sure that people are ready and that they're dealing with those issues that allow them to get there.
And in order for them to do that, they have to have information, don't
Right.
they?
Right. And information that's easy to use, that any of us
that's
can
a good
understand.
point, too.
And that will make a difference in people's lives.
Yes. Well, we have placed on the screen the maps that clearly show the disparities that existed with respect to cardiovascular disease. And we've also placed on the screen the maps that show those bad numbers with respect to high blood pressure.
Yes.
And people can see that dark red
Right.
that in 2016, it didn't lighten up at all. Cardiovascular, it was a little bit better in 2016. High blood pressure, no. But moving on to the next condition after high blood pressure, we looked at all cancers?
At all cancers, yes.
We got some surprises, didn't we, Jeff?
Once again, we saw that the people in the Adamsville area were impacted by cancer. But what we
Yes.
also saw, and what the map that you just mentioned would demonstrate, is that the greatest burden for cancers is in the Sandy Springs, North Fulton area. So as when
Did they have the highest percentages?
Yes. Whereas we could target Central and South County for major cardiovascular disease or high blood pressure. We still have work to do on the burden of cancer in Adamsville, but it's just not as great as it is in other areas. So
In other words, the disparity this time
Right.
is not between Central and South Fulton and the rest of Fulton County. The disparity is between the Sandy Springs, North Fulton area and the rest of Fulton County.
correct.
Is that taking the data a little too far?
No, I think that's what the data show.
That's what the data show.
But I don't want us to forget that there's still a problem in Adamsville. The burden's still great. It's
I
just
think
not
it's
the
across
highest.
the county,
Yes,
isn't
ma'am.
it?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that I recall that you wrote that actually, with respect to this condition, it's county-wide.
Correct.
We have not, there was no section that really had made any really significant
Right.
improvement.
Right. And there was an increase in the Adamsville area, but the increase for the county as a whole was twice as high. So there's still concerns in all of these areas, but I think there's also some hope, and there's a good message that even though things are bad, they're not as bad as they were. That we're moving in the right direction in looking at some of these issues.
Can we say this now for all cancers? Because we have that map on the screen too. And people can see that we have that dark red coming from the top of the map
Right.
this time. And
Correct.
we have not had that for high blood pressure and for cardiovascular disease
That's correct.
and for the others. And of course, we're being very careful, since I'm dealing with scientists here, to follow the facts and not reach any conclusions. But in talking to public health officials and epidemiologists,
Right.
let's put it that way, did they have any kind of information that would probably explain why though all sections of the county had increases in cancers, that the highest percentage of deaths were in areas that are really not
Right.
low-income areas?
It-
But we've still got to go back to those census tracts, though, haven't we?
yes. Yeah.
And deal with the demographics.
Right. Right.
Because all areas of North Fulton are not high-income areas, are they?
Correct. But
Just like all areas of Central and South are not,
not
low
low-income
income.
or-
That's
or
why
full-
you keep talking to us about census tracts.
Right, right. And so I don't know that there's been any study yet to show what's happening in Fulton and why the burden's so much greater in Sandy
When it
Springs
comes to
or North Fulton.
cancers in some of your
correct.
high-income areas.
Correct.
Yes.
And it's surprising because this is a population that you believe has access to health care.
They have access
that
to it.
that they have parks, they have some of the things that
The social determinants
Right.
aren't not as impacted.
right. So we're not sure what those are yet.
Well, Jeff, they're giving me a signal here, and I knew that was going to happen. You're really going to have to come back
My pleasure.
and talk to us further, because one of the things that I find is really, really helpful, and that is when you go into the community, people want facts.
Right.
They want facts, and no longer do they accept the fact that sugar runs in the family.
Right.
They don't accept that. I
Right.
have to carry something else. I want to thank you for coming in. I know that the Ryan White program is one of the most important programs that the county is involved with, along with the metro area. And I just want to say that it continues to be a high priority area in my district. And even though there, as we're saying here, we see some bright spots,
Right.
we continue to have an HIV AIDS epidemic, particularly when it
Right.
comes to a certain target population. Is that
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
We're going to continue to do what we're supposed to do as elected officials to help with that program too. And thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
That's all the time that we have for the direct interview, but I'll be back in a moment with closing thoughts. Stay with us. It is clear people want information. People want facts. People want to know why some sections of the county are sicker than everybody else and die earlier than everybody else. We are deeply appreciative that here at Fulton County, we have a public health structure that is focusing on answers and not excuses. We are so pleased that you have joined us today as we shared with the public health officials the information that we have on where we are now with respect to the Adamsville Health Study. Thank you for joining us. So until next time, stay strong. To learn more about today's conversation, contact me at 404-612-8222. That's 404-612-8222. You can also email me at emma.darnell@fultoncountyga.gov. And also visit us at emmadarnell.com. Or contact us on Facebook or Twitter.